This is Dr. Hollisa Alewine. Welcome back to more than another episode where we're looking into some passage of scripture that at first read, it seemed a little puzzling. But as we take a few more reads and look at some words, maybe figure out the context, we realize there's actually more to it than that. It's more than we thought the first time we read it. And so in this program, what I'd like to do is something more than a manicure. You say, manicure? Where's that in the Torah? Well, it's in the book of Deuteronomy. Yeah, I know. Who thought we would encounter manicures in the Torah? But it's there. So let's read it. Deuteronomy 21:10. It says, when you go out, and that Hebrew word there for go out is tetzeh. When you go out to battle against your enemies, and the Lord your God delivers them into your hands, and you take them away captive, and you will see among the captives a beautiful woman, which in Hebrew is Yefat Toar, and she's not fat. She's Yefat Toar, and have a desire, a chashak, for her, and would take her as a wife for yourself. Right? Then it goes on. And we know that in those instructions, there's certain things that you're going to have to do. And one of them is, you're going to have to clip her nails. She's not going to be too attractive as she goes through this process. She's going to sit in your house. She's going to cry over her lost parents. Her hair is going to be cut, so it's not going to be so beautiful. She's not going to have the big, long, fingernails with the glittery stuff on it and the pretty paint and all that. It's not going to be all that. She's just not going to be as pretty. And you know what? That seems a little outdated to us. We're like, in what universe would this happen? Well, in the ancient times, it did happen. You might conquer another people. You might go to war. And there might be some young lady that stands out. But one thing's for sure, in regulating this, where you might run into somebody from another nation that looks attractive to you, the Father says, okay, if this is what's going to happen, then do it this way. Make sure that you're treating her properly. And we're going to talk about, what's her ownership in this? Does she have a choice in this? And make sure that it's not just a matter of lust on the part of the soldier. And we do know this in this universe, in wars from ancient time up until today, conquering armies routinely rape the women and children of their foes. It just happens. It's brutal, it's evil, it's wicked, and it just keeps happening. But the instructions to Israel is, you're not supposed to give in to such a beastly behavior. That is not a human behavior, even in time of war. Israel is supposed to exhibit what it means to be a human being made in the image of Elohim, not a human being conforming to the image of the beast. So what this passage is actually describing is what modern Judaism would probably describe as a conversion process. After a month of mourning, she's had her hair shaved, her nails are left unmanicured, her beautiful eyes are red and swollen from weeping. So if she had false eyelashes, they've long dropped off. The Israelite, if this is not true love, if this is not a heavenly ordained relationship, before the month is out, he's probably going to find her more of an annoyance. She's always going to be underfoot, crying, not looking her best, and he's not going to be allowed to touch her for this month. He can't. We know that in ancient times, armies like, say, the Moabites or the Midianites, they would take their most beautiful young women. They would dress them in beautiful garments. They would put jewelry on them. They'd give them the fancy hairdos and the manicures and I don't know if they actually had the big long nails back then with glitter and stuff and paint, polish, but they were doing something with the nails that needed to be cut off. But they would take these beautiful young women who are decked out, and they would send them ahead of the army. And they would try to seduce the other army, and that would distract them from the battle ahead. And we saw this tactic that was used on the Israelites at a place called Baal Peor. Midianite and the Moabite women did this. And basically, the Midianites and the Moabites won that battle without an arrow shot because the Israelites just succumbed to adultery and idolatry. It must have been quite a manicure that they fell for. But now, he says, assume, Israel, you have conquered, and you have found this beautiful young woman. So now, she's going to trade in these fine garments, and she's going to put on these ugly sackcloth mourning garments so she can properly mourn her parents that she's now separated from. At the end of the month, the understanding is if she has not agreed to abandon her foreign gods, then she has to be given her freedom. Now, if she agrees to cling to the Elohim of Israel, then she may be married to her captor, and she can assume all the rights and responsibilities of any Israelite wife. But either way, you'll notice that the outcome of this, either way, this foreign woman, or beautiful young lady, she is going to lose her captive status, and she's going to find her freedom. The question is, what kind of freedom will she find? Because if she chooses the one kind of freedom, if she's not going to abandon her foreign gods, then she's being set free, but she's going to go right back into captivity to those foreign gods whom she serves. The other woman, if she's going to cling to the Elohim of her Israelite husband, now she has her freedom in the perfect Torah of liberty, as James calls it. So what happens? Tetzeh, it comes from the root yatzah, and it means to go out or to bring out. So going out to war for an Israelite is going to have a deeper meaning, especially because the potential there is there for him to bring a captive woman home to marry. So let's go back to the first mention of how the word yatzah was used. And it's on the third day of creation. It's Genesis 1:12. It says, the earth brought forth totzeh, vegetation, plants yielding seed after their kind, and trees bearing fruit with seed in them after their kind, and God saw that it was good. So there's a seed principle involved in this going out to war. It's entirely possible that this act of going out to war will result in new life, a resurrected life. You thought it was just going to be death and destruction, but here's this captive woman. Here is this stranger to the covenant who's standing out a little bit different. And now the possibility is there that she could be in this bloodline of the promised seed. So on the third day of creation, something stands out here. Trees are mentioned. The earth, totzeh, it brought forth the plants. It brought forth the trees that bore fruit with seed in them. Sometimes in Scripture, trees are metaphors for human beings. So what went out of the prophetic people? Even before the sixth day, when the actual human beings were created, we've got a proto-prophecy. We've got a seed prophecy on the third day, even before there's human beings, because the trees are prophetic of people. What's happening is it's making fruit with like kind seed. Remember, after their kind, after their kind, after their kind, with seed in them. So the plants are described as matzriah, zirah, matzriah, zirah, seeding seed. Right? There's a kind of a double there. Mazriah, zirah, seeding seed, or sowing seed, like making pregnant after their kind. So Elohim could see that when plants and people bear fruit with seed after their kind, he says it's tov, it's good. And he saw that it was good, it was tov. So when an Israelite warrior sees this beautiful foreign woman, that's the question. If he were to marry this woman, to reproduce, to bring forth children, to bring forth from his seed, and then sow new seed into the earth, is he doing it with someone who is of like kind and like mind in the word with him? If this is the case, and this is what this trial period is for, who is she going to be? Will she commit to this covenant? Was she planted out there among the nations, but actually her heart is in the covenant? She's actually one of us. And if that's true, if she's of like kind, then it's going to be good. It's going to be tov. And often what Elohim sees as good or tov may not be what human beings see as tov. But when we have free choice, sometimes our view of what is tov can change. But it will never change what tov is. Our view of what is tov, can change. But it will never change what is tov. How many times do we marry people and we thought it was tov, but the scripture was telling us lo tov, that's not tov. That person is not going to serve Elohim. That person is going to take you down a different path. That person is going to introduce idolatrous behaviors into your life. To you, he or she might be tov. But as long as they persist with that heart and that behavior, it won't change what true tov is. And so the Torah here is creating the possibility, it's recognizing the possibility of the seed to replicate after the image of Elohim. But this is a risk, because the young warrior's out there, he's fighting, he's pumped up, he can be carried away by his passion. He can want to see something good in her that really isn't there. It's just in the form. It's just in the outward form. And so it might be a matter, it says, of desire or chashak, which is basically lust. Chashak is the same word that's used when it describes how Shechem raped Dinah. And it was only later that his heart changed. But at first, he just wanted what looked good. It's based on an outward form. It's based on an image, an appearance. And in Hebrew, appearance is toar. The Yefet Toar. What is she? Well, she has a beautiful image. But the question, by going through this process, yes, the image is beautiful. So let's unbeautify the outside for a month, so you can focus what's on the inside. Is this going to reproduce after the kind of Elohim? Or is it going to reproduce after the kind of the beast? Some translations of the Bible, they don't translate the word that defines this trap of falling in love with a foreign woman. It's called the law of the beautiful woman, the Yefat Toar. The captive woman, yes, she is beautiful of form, but what is inside? And so this whole month of seeing her as kind of ugly and annoyingly weepy, cry-fied. Who wants to be around a cry-fied person for an entire month? A few minutes, I'm done. A whole month of hanging around a cry-fied woman? But it's also revealing this passionate warrior's true motivation. Is it love? Is it lust? He's not going to be allowed to see her outer beauty for a full month. It's like the month of Elul, when this particular Torah portion is read. The Yafat Torah is always read during the month of Elul on the annual reading cycle. And Elul, it means vain emptiness. That's the question. Is my desire for this woman a vain emptiness? And so let's make the captive ugly on the outside to test the warrior's heart on the inside. But both hearts can be revealed on the 1st of Tishrei, the 7th month, at the new moon. Remember, that's the Feast of Trumpets. That's the resurrection of the dead. Each year, we rehearse the resurrection of the dead every year on the Feast of Trumpets. It's a new year in the annual cycle. It's called the going out of the year, the turn of the year in the Torah. So this captive's month of home confinement, it may not align in practicality, but its position and how we're reading leading up to the fall feast is teaching us the principle. And that principle is free will. It has to be part of the Yafat Torah marriage. She has to be willing to give up idolatrous behavior, other gods, to be part of this marriage procedure, to reveal the true form of the marriage. Dinah, she wasn't free. Shechem, he claimed to love her, but you notice he didn't permit her to return to her father and brothers while he's negotiating the contract. She's loved, and we'll say quote unquote loved. I'm assuming his heart did change, but at the very same time, he has her chained to himself. There's a coercion element there, that chashak, the desire. She seems to be an object upon whom he's placed his passion, but he didn't trust her with free will. And so the captive woman has to have this option. She has to be permitted to go free. If she chooses not to be part of the covenant community, she has to be released, because she's, in all actuality, still chained to the idols of her heritage. For a full month, she distances herself from that idolatry. We'll find out if she's a Ruth, if she's a true convert, if she's truly willing to leave the idols behind, if she's truly willing to leave her family behind. Because as a wife, she can't just simply introduce those things into the marriage, into the covenant people. He cannot sow those seeds with that woman. It'll produce a mixed field. And it'll be a field of word and tares. And so in this way, it's weeding out if there's any seed of the woman that would produce idolatry. A woman who is going to convert, remember this is going to be a term that doesn't really fit the time period. It's a little anachronistic. But if she converts, if she wants to cling to the land, the covenant, and the people of Israel, now she's going to enter into true life and freedom. So there's a risk about a marriage like this. There's a warning within a marriage like this that the risk is so high of producing mixed seed that you must follow this procedure. You can't say, I love you, I marry you, and be married. It takes a full month. The Torah does establish the provision. So the assumption is there from the Torah that there will be people out there who are listening to a call, like Ruth, like Rahab. They don't really fit the places where they are. They want to join themselves to the covenant people. And so there can be a redeeming possibility of marrying this Yefat Toar, that maybe you have found one of those. Maybe that's why she's attractive to you. Maybe it's not just the outside you're attracted to. Maybe you have found a kindred heart, and that's why she's attractive. You know, Boaz reminded Ruth that she could have any nice-looking man she wanted because of her beauty. Boaz wouldn't say that if she hadn't already proven herself. Remember the elders in the gates? They told within the hearing of that sitting at the gate, which is like a court, they acknowledge she is a modest, virtuous woman. She has a good reputation. They would not say that if she was still an idolatrous woman. And so when he goes back and asks, may I marry her? This is their response. She's modest. She's virtuous. She's of good reputation. Yeah, go for it, Boaz. If this one won't redeem her, you're going to have a good woman. She's one of us. And this particular law, at first glance, it sounds like, man, this is really barbaric. You snatch a foreign woman in war and take her home and cut her hair and cut her nails and make her cry for a month? No, you're giving her a chance to shine and to show that what first attracted this young man was not lust. Instead, this young man is out there looking for his kin. Because marrying Boaz did not make Ruth righteous. He married her because she was righteous. I'll say that again. I want to hear that again. Boaz marrying Ruth did not make her righteous. She was righteous. That's why he married her. It's only after he's noticed her beautifully Torah-informed hard work that he finally looks on her outward appearance. This outward appearance, remember, it's the Toar, but it could be reflecting a heart inside. There's a spiritual beauty that tends to make the outside look better. I don't know how that happens. But if you've ever run into someone like, you just think they're a beautiful person, and it's not because the outside, is in all the beauty magazines. It's because they're beautiful inside, and it's making the outside also beautiful. And so this righteous Israelite warrior, he's looking for a spiritual spark. He's looking for something tov, something good inside this captive woman, in spite of her outward beauty. It's the flip of what we think. Oh, he's just lusting after. Well, we'll find out. But what if this is a righteous warrior? And he notices this woman. He says, there's something about her. And so he says, okay, let's do the ugly month. Let's just go ahead and get the ugly month over with, and I'll find out if my hunch is right. If this connection is spiritual, and she was meant to be one of us, we'll find out. And during that month, he can search his own heart. He can say, well, let me make sure it wasn't just outward appearance. While she's going through her mourning the people she's left behind, mourning her natural father and mother, and embracing a new heritage. She's now going to have a new spiritual father and mother. And their names are Abraham and Sarah. The converts, it doesn't matter. When you convert, your father becomes Abraham and your mother becomes Sarah. And so she's mourning the death of her natural parents and saying, you know what? I now have new parents. Abraham and Sarah, my new parents. And so Yeshua sent out his disciples. When he sent them out to the nations, he's basically saying, I want you to go find these Yefat Toars. They're out there. I promise you they're out there. Remember the Torah? It said this would happen. He has a passion for a foreign bride, but it's not an idolatrous foreign bride. It's those beautiful women out there who were always going to be part of Israel. All they needed was the opportunity. And this passion that Yeshua has for his bride, it's not like the desire of Shechem or even Amnon, the lust for natural beauty. That's not what it is. It's a passion that's generated for the very reason that this Torah was written, for the marriage of a beautiful captive. And so 2,000 years later, Yeshua is still awaiting from us a decision of free will. Not all foreign women are the same. Just like Ruth and her seed were nothing compared to the idolatrous Moabites and Midianites that seduced the Israelite warriors at Baal Peor. And so Judaism acknowledges there's a need for this Yefat Toar. Because they say, if there wasn't a need to go out and find these people, go out and find this bride among the nations, it wouldn't have been put in the Torah to begin with. And so in order to recover their own, they point to this particular law and say, this is part of the process of recovering the exiles of Israel from the nations. And of course, the Assyrian deportations of the northern tribes play a role in how they view this. The Midrash to Devarim, this particular Torah portion, says even after all the laws of the Yefat Toar have been enacted, it is a sign that this woman was destined to be converted. They say that's why it's in the Torah. That there are those out there, their hearts were always going in the right direction. And then they go on and they comment, and this is incredible. It says, today we marry Gerim, which is strangers, non-Jews, from all nationalities, since the conqueror Sennacherib dispersed the nations from their lands of origin. And therefore, we can no longer identify restricted nations. What are they saying? The nations are all mixed up, number one. They don't know where the exiles were deported to. They're out there. They say, we can't even identify nations anymore. They could be anywhere. And therefore, if there is a person, a stranger out there, an idol worshiper, who wants to come into the covenant, then we accept them. If their hearts are pure, they get a little trial period. Make sure they're serious, which I think is where you don't have Judaism in the first century, you have Judaisms. And so when we look at the Jerusalem Council, there's all sorts of thought that's represented there about how do we get this stranger in here? How do we bring them close to the covenant? Because you don't have formal conversions back then the way that they're done today. And so there were different schools of thought on how that process was supposed to go. But it's always been a possibility. And one of the reasons is because of this very Torah portion. Yeah, those 10 northern tribes, they went out there. And so, lest we exclude bringing one of our own back, then it's permitted to allow, number one, a convert from any nation, because we don't know who people are anymore. And number 2, to marry that convert. So if we've been captivated by a potential groom, step 1 has been completed. We've been saved from total idolatry and depravity. So now we sit in the groom's house. And there's a little transition period. There's some mourning for our parents, for our family, the things we left behind. You say, why me? Why doesn't my whole family believe the same way? Why don't my friends believe the same way? You're going to do some mourning, but don't sit there too long. Don't sit there waiting on them. You've got work to do in the kingdom. If we sit in that mourning house too long, going through step 1, then step 2 is not going to be a pretty picture. The groom desires us anyway, even if we're acting ugly, if he knows our hearts are after his. Even though we cry and bellyache and carry on about so many things that we left behind. What are we saying? Well, back at such and such church, man, they had the best praise and worship ever. Well, back at such and such church, they did this or that. Well, when my weekends were my own, I could do this. We can all look back at something we left behind, and we can cry about it. But the decision is ours. Are we going to finish having a funeral for what we left behind? Are we just very bravely going to take hold of the covenant, take hold of the land, take hold of its people? The place where we were born is just a starting place, but it's not our final destination. We have to start thinking about marrying into this holy mission. We have to start thinking about that Feast of Trumpets, about what's going to happen during this period of separation, how we're going to prepare to be a bride. Because what we're learning on one level, yeah, it's a physical thing. It could have happened this way. But it's also teaching us a spiritual principle, that no matter where we are or were, that the Holy Spirit could bring us out, could lead us out, lead us to the covenant. And yes, I expect us, we'll all go through our mourning period. We'll all wail and bellyache about the way things used to be, or why everybody's not just like us. You're not there yet. You're not there yet. But the question is, are we ready to marry into a holy mission with our bridegroom? The love that he has for us is because he saw our hearts. And we can prepare ourselves. So, yeah, it's more than a haircut. It's more than getting over being cry-fied. It's more than a manicure. It's preparation to be brought into the house of the bridegroom.